Awesome. Great to see so many faces. Thank you very much for attending today. Some repeating faces as well, which is always good. Really topical session today. So I'm looking forward to the content, as I know a few people will be, in terms of what's happening at the moment and all the other good stuff. With regards to, just really quickly, we're doing a marketing research report at the moment into SMEs, SMBs, and what their marketing spend is on. This is all part of the marketing series that Sadie has organized. There will be an official white paper written up at the end of this that will distribute to anybody that participates. So I'm just going to share that link in the chat first and foremost. If anybody wants to see the report that comes out the other end, really appreciate your input. So look forward to that. During the session today, if you've got any questions, please can you ask them in the chat. At the end of the session, there will be time to address those questions. But I appreciate that Chris, Jake and Ben have got quite a lot of content that they want to get through. So we just want to make sure we cover that content off. And then finally, I mean, this is hugely topical. 2020, there was a series of phishing attacks just around COVID alone. For anybody that didn't see this, a few weeks back, there was a massive attack based around Tesla and Bitcoin. With one individual losing £400,000 in a few seconds. So I'll just share that in the chat as well if anybody wants a bit of back topic to that. Personally, I laid on the sofa one evening and saw this unfold in real time. And whenever there's a countdown clock saying if I don't do this within the next 2 minutes, I'm not going to be able to take part, instantly arouses my suspicion. With that, though, I'm going to hand over to yourself, Chris, if that's all right, to introduce a bit more about the session and what we can expect today.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And thanks very much, Ollie. So some very interesting, relevant points there about today's topic. So I'm Chris Ward-Jones, CTO of DCI. I've attended quite a few of these now, so some of you might recognise me. For those who aren't aware of who we are, so DCI, we're a Cambridge-based technology company. We offer a mix of technical products and services such as cloud co-location, backup, archive solutions, DR as a service, that kind of thing. But we also partner with other companies such as ESET, who offer a broad range of cybersecurity solutions, which are suitable, perfect in fact, for small companies and enterprises alike. And to that end, I'll hand over to Jake, who is a security specialist for ESET UK. And he has some rather interesting insight into one of the biggest cyber crime problems that we face today, which Ollie just touched on there, which is phishing. Jake, over to yourself.
Great. Well, thanks very much for having me today. So yes, I'm Jake Moore and I'm a cybersecurity specialist at ESET. My background is in the police force down here in Dorset. I used to investigate computer crime. I spent 14 years in the police. So for about 10 years, I was in the digital forensics unit. I was taking computers apart, looking for digital evidence that would go to court, from fraud to murder, you name it. I've been in court and I've talked about it. It was fascinating stuff. And then the latter few years that I was with the police, I was in the cybercrime team investigating cyber crimes, but also giving out proactive advice to companies. And actually, I dealt a lot with our Dorset Chamber of Commerce, which we work very closely with down here. Just getting out and about and speaking to businesses of all sizes. You know what it's like. There are sole traders right the way up to huge corporations that might be local to you, but they still have the same problems. And those problems usually come down to how you can hack people. Now, I love the term hacking a human, and that's what I tend to do to bring these stories to life. I find that if you actually go and penetration test a company, it makes them realize how vulnerable they might be. And so over the past few years, I've got into a few companies. Actually, I've got one talk that I actually broke into the police station, one of the police stations that I used to work at, after I left, just to prove to them that I could do it. And I hacked into their database, which was pretty funny. But for today, I'm going to be talking about phishing emails and targeted emails. Now, at ESET, we do all sorts of internet security products that can keep you extra safe, but there are still going to be those ways that these threat actors will target us. They know where they can manipulate us. They know our own vulnerabilities. And one of those today I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's have a look at this. Hopefully you should be now seeing my screen. So, whoa, there we go. So it's called how you can hack anyone's email. And in brackets, I've said, well, give yourself a pay rise, because why wouldn't you go and give yourself a pay rise if you could hack anyone's email, and you could even hack your boss's email? But let's take this back to last year. Now, we went to remote working en masse. Now, we're talking millions of people have gone to work at the home, and we didn't really have much of a choice. And people just had to use dusty old laptops if they had them, or whatever they could do to VPN, hopefully, into their machines. But people really didn't understand security. That was pretty much a secondary thought for many, many businesses. I've still spoken to companies who still don't really understand all the pitfalls, because let's face it, we're all about making money. Over the last year, security has gone straight down the priority list, and it's featuring quite far down the bottom, especially if some of you out there are having to think about your own cybersecurity, but also wear different hats, such as your SEO, search engine optimization. You might be into the social media side, as well as being the head of finance. You name it, you might have lots on. So remote working came with its own worries. And it was just under a year ago that I was inundated with loads of Zoom and team calls. We're on one now, we're still doing it now. And we were getting more Teams calls than ever. Now, I don't always like to use my own personal laptop, my own work laptop that I was given by ESET. I sometimes like to use this computer that I'm using now. It's got a better camera. I've stuck a nice microphone on top of it. I've even stuck some lighting behind there. So I like to use that when I can. But to get this particular Teams meeting onto this machine, I thought the best thing to do was just to forward the email. Now, the amount of emails that I was getting, it was just crazy. The fact that everyone wanted to now meet online, although it was now easier, it was still filling up my calendar quite rapidly. So I forwarded it to my own personal Outlook from my ESET email, which was a nice jazzy computer, like the one you can see there. Look at that. Oh, I love those odd images. But something very, very strange happened. Now, this calendar invite was sent from someone in my team to me and other people. I then got that message. I forwarded it onto my Outlook on my personal computer. I assumed it would come up saying that it was from me, because I was the one that forwarded it. Now, this would, in any normal circumstances, if you get an email, you forward it on to someone, it comes up from whoever forwarded it, i.e. yourself. But the strange thing was, it came up from the original person who organized the meeting. Now, I'm going to try and explain that in a little bit of depth, and hopefully you'll get a follow. If you don't, please do shout out. But I've tried to make this as simple as possible to follow. So, person A, the meeting organizer, sends the email to lots of people, including person B. In this case, it was me and my work ESET email address. And I then forwarded it on to my personal email address, which is, in this case, I use Outlook. However, it said, once it had hit my Outlook, it said it was from person A, the original sender. Now this, in my brain, I'm now thinking, oh, how could some threat actor manipulate this? I wonder if no one knows about this. I wonder if I can actually go and play around with that email, see what I could do. Maybe I could pretend to be person A in the situation. So I need to do some testing on this. But you can edit the email. Now, this is the bit that I thought, wow, if you can edit an email that has been forwarded, maybe you really could look like that original person A. Now, the stuff that you can edit, well, this is what I thought, WTF, what the hell's going on? The editable items include the body of the email, so what's written actually in the email itself, and the subject line. Now, these are two huge things that you can go and edit. So if it's come in as a calendar invite saying financial quarter, blah, 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 something extremely boring, but you can go and change it to important meeting, we must meet, you must read this email now, then you're more likely to go and open it and read it. But then if you can then change the body, you can get rid of everything that was written in there and do whatever you want. You could maybe put in a phishing link. And this is what made me think, I wonder if a threat actor has even thought of that and could add in a malicious link within there. However, there are a few uneditable items in there. You cannot change or edit the time and date of the invite. Now, the invite will stay in there. You can't go and play around with that. You can't go and change the location of the meeting. So if it says it's physically in London or it's actually in Teams, you can't go and change that. And then you can't go and change the ICS calendar file. This is the file that when you double click on that, it should, if it works, jump into your calendar entry. Maybe you're using Google Calendar or Outlook itself. It would then populate a calendar entry and stay in there. You can't go and change that. So it still offers me way more than I ever thought. I never thought you'd be able to use the original name and change the body of the email and the subject line. So with this in mind, like with previous penetration testings that I've done, I thought I need to go and play with this. So the initial testing, I need to go and look at my own emails from work and see who is in my email list with a calendar entry. And lo and behold, there's one from the boss. Now, our boss, called Malcolm Tuck, very nice guy, he every so often will send out a meeting to absolutely everyone. I found one in there and it says, "Hi team, try to attend this event, blah, blah, blah." It's called the all hands meeting. This is something that we get 3 or 4 times a year. So, but it was an older one and it was very easy to go and use this one. Even though I'd gone past the date, I could still use it. So I go and forward it on, from my email address, I forwarded it onto my Outlook account, my personal one. And to see what I could do, I edited a couple of things. As you can see there, it says everything deleted from the body of the email for this experiment. And I changed the subject line to the word experiment. Now, I didn't want to worry Malcolm, so I did tell him what I was doing just in case anything happened. And as you can see underneath the line there, what it says is it's Jake Moore on behalf of Malcolm Tuck. So actually, when you do send it to some clients, so if you send it within Outlook Exchange, it does give away who's actually forwarded it on. And not only that, he got a notification. It told him that I had forwarded it on. So if I was forwarding loads of all of his calendar entries, he might get suspicious, going, "What are you doing? Why do you keep sending these?" This is something that I had to bear in mind. But if I were to use this maliciously, the game would be up because it actually said it was on behalf of Malcolm Tuck, actually sent from Jake. So that would give the game away. However, this is how it looks in Outlook on my web client. Looks pretty good. As you can see, it says Malcolm Tuck experiment. That looks pretty promising. But even better than that, when I used it with my Apple iPhone, it all started to look quite interesting. There it is. This is how it looked in my notification screen. I then open it up, and this is what I was able to see. Malcolm Tuck to Jake Moore, so it's from Malcolm, experiment, everything deleted from the body of this email. Right. And if I even look at that, the ICS file is still there. So I can still see the calendar entry. I couldn't actually delete that, but I could have written loads and loads and loads and actually pushed it down towards the bottom. And as you can see there, it is actually from his email address. So this is one point to note. If you ever get a phishing email and you're told at the back of your mind, you're thinking, I must go and click on the email address. I must check to see who it's come from. Well, this won't work, because it will tell you it's actually come from the email address that you're expecting it to be from. And like I say, there's a notification that pops into Malcolm's email address himself. However, I did go and test this again. I forwarded it on from my Outlook account. And when I forwarded it on from there, it started to get even better. It didn't then notify Malcolm once more what I had done. So now I've got it within my Outlook web email. I can then forward this on, pretend to be Malcolm. He won't know what's going on. I thought I'd do some further testing. I thought I'd ramp it up a little bit, have some fun. And then I thought there's someone at our company that I know is really hot on these kind of things. He's the old security specialist like me. He now does a lot of training. He knows all the latest scams. He's always looking at the press to see what's going on, what are the threat actors playing with. I thought if I can fool him, I bet you I can fool anyone. So I make up this email, and it says it's from Mark James. And Mark James is the security specialist now, head of training. And I send out an email from him pretending that it's been a tough year. But look, we're going to give everyone £250 as an Amazon voucher. This is something quite believable. If you speak to lots of people who have been hit with phishing emails, the ones that have clicked on it, when you ask them why they clicked on it, they say, well, it was believable. It was something that I thought could happen. Now, if you said to someone, can I have the password to your bank account? They're not going to believe that, even if it is the bank, hopefully. They're going to say, absolutely no way, I'm not trusting that. But if you send someone a £5 free John Lewis voucher, for example, there is a chance they might believe that. So if an email comes in from head of training to say, thanks everyone, you've all been absolute stars, please click on this link and you'll get £250 in Amazon vouchers, well, you're probably going to believe it. Now, this is something that I thought, well, again, malicious actors definitely could manipulate and use to their advantage to click and make people go off to that website. Of course, that would be a phishing website, and that would be where you'd hope that they would go and type in their Amazon accounts. And this is what they're doing. The first stage is targeting people. The second stage is to create that fake website that looks as legit as possible. As you can see there it is. Now, this pops up on my phone like this, but I also sent it to Mark himself, pretending that it had been sent to everyone, of course. Now, if you send it to everyone within all the email accounts, it would, of course, go to the person who sent it. This is how it looks. It looks pretty good. It's got hi, thank you, as you expect, on iPhones. This is, I did test it on all Google Android phones, on different clients as well. And we can chat at the end of which ones it does work and which ones it doesn't work. But for now, it's just for iPhone that I'm going to talk about. And there it is. It says, here's £250, click on this link. And if you go and click on the email address itself, there it is. It comes up from mark.james@eset.co.uk. Now, I was on the phone to Mark when this was sent out by me. I sent it to him. I know how he works. I know how that he uses his AirPods, and he's got his computer up there, but he does most of his reading of his emails on his iPhone. That's just the way that he works. That's some insider knowledge, I suppose. I am on the phone to him. The email pops up. I know it pops up to him. So I pretended that I've got the email as well. And I say, wow, Mark, just a minute, you just emailed me. And he said, have I? And I said, yeah, oh, wow, Mark, oh my God, you've sent out a £250 Amazon voucher. God, how did you clear that? Oh, you're the best. How on earth did you get round Malcolm for this? This is awesome. And he goes, I don't know. You could hear him a bit flustered. I knew he was looking at his phone. He's talking to me in his AirPods. I'm loving it. I'm trying not to laugh. I know that he is looking at his phone, probably scratching his head, knowing him, just in his pants as well, just sitting there thinking, right, what the hell's happened? And I went, just a minute, you've gone quiet, Mark. This is not like you. Is everything right? You haven't been hacked or anything, trying to joke around the subject. He still goes quiet. I said, Mark, seriously, have you been hacked? And he said, oh, I don't actually know what's going on here. Now, this is where I would have loved to have gone on for more, but I couldn't stop laughing. And I said, Mark, okay, this is me. And he goes, what, have you got into my emails? I said, well, I do know one of your old passwords. We used to have an old joke that I did actually work out one of his old passwords was Gandalf.1 many, many years ago. And he'll never live that down. Good old Gandalf. But the fact is, he was stunned at how I had done this. He couldn't work it out. Now, he's the head of training. He knows all the scams. In quick time, he couldn't work this out. That means if someone else had got this, there is a good chance your staff would have likely to have been clicking on it before checking it. And even if they did check it, they wouldn't go further than just checking the email itself. Very few people go and verify by picking up the good old fashioned phone. They tend not to ring up and say, did you send that email you want me to go to? They just don't do it. They find it's going to annoy the person on the other end of the phone, because that might be up to 10 times a day. And we can't do that. We can't ring them up and say, did you send that email? Yes, just in case one of those 100 emails may come in from a malicious actor. So with this in mind, I thought I really do have to go and make some people aware. Now, the bug bounty scheme, I don't know if you know about it, is pretty awesome. Bug bounties are out there. I thought I really should go and make some people aware, Google, Microsoft, Apple and the like. I thought I may even find some money is to be made here. So I went straight to Microsoft. I thought it might have been their issue straight away. And they said, upon investigation, blah, 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 it does not meet the bar for security servicing. I was quite shocked by this. That's pretty much their way of saying, it's not really our fault here. I suppose they do put in on behalf of when you use this vulnerability within Exchange. Now, we know there's been some serious problems with mail servers, Exchange being hacked recently. We've had some Chinese hackers all over the press. Actually, some fantastic research came out of ESET on this. And Microsoft have just said, no, this is more of a social engineering kind of thing. So they didn't want to know about it. They didn't want to change anything. And fair dues to them. This may take a lot of work for them to go and do. And in their mind, they're thinking it's not working. Well, I then thought, I've got to go and tell Google. I've got to go and tell Apple. So I did. I got on the email to Google, and Google said, no, this is social engineering. They said, well done. They said, this is pretty impressive. However, we don't think it's down to us at Google because it's not our fault. We think it's down to the people at the other end of the line, because I suppose if someone uses Gmail to go and try and fish someone out of something and clicking on something, it's not really Gmail's fault, and I accept that. I suppose it's actually the victim's fault, possibly, because they've gone and clicked on the link that they shouldn't have. It's not actually Gmail. They were just the vehicle that traveled the email into their inbox. So I then spoke to Apple, and Apple said, well done, but who uses email in that way? They said everyone should use a digital signature. Now, I don't know about you, but very few people use a digital signature. And this may stop the problem, but there is little that you can do if people do not use digital signatures. Out of our company, there are about 3 people that I know have set it up. If anything, it becomes a bit of a nightmare because you then can't easily open them on iPhones, and lots of people want to work remotely. And if they're using their tablets or using their iPhone, they do not want this to occur. It's actually becoming a bit of a hassle. And we all know about security balancing with convenience. We always have to have good security, but if the convenience goes, then that's it. People won't use it, and then you haven't got any function of the app itself. So this is about balancing security as best we can. So I thought, well, no one really wants to listen to me about this. I need to go and tell the world about this. But how better than to tell the world about this problem than coming up with a genuine little story. Now, this is where I'm going to finish with here, because I thought if I can actually get hold of anyone's email address, I need to prove this, but with a fun way. I always like to change this type of vulnerability that I find into an interesting way that you might go away and remember. So what I did was I sent an email to my boss, who is called Julian Roberts. Julian Roberts is head of marketing. He's who I report to. And I sent an email to Malcolm Tuck, from Malcolm Tuck, but really it was actually from me. So I had my old calendar entry from Malcolm. I thought, right, I'm going to send it to Julian Roberts. And the subject line, which I can change, is going to be pay review Jake. I thought this hopefully is going to be a lot of fun. And what I wrote was, morning, Julian. I think it's time we had a quick discussion about Jake Moore. He's now been with us 2 years and done a phenomenal job in the work that he does. Maybe we could consider a mid-year pay review. I'd be happy to support this, and I'm positive we can get headquarters backing too. I'm sure you will agree, so let's find some time to chat. Now, with that, I thought this is going to be a lot of fun. I put in there, let's have some time to chat, just in case he didn't actually just click yes if he was to go and speak to HR or finance and give me, I was not there to try and steal any money. I did not want them to go and send any money at my way, because that really would have been crossing the line. But if he'd then spoken to Julian, hopefully they would have just discussed that something strange is going on. Anyway, I did leave it for a few hours just in case Julian had read it and wanted to, in fact, give me a pay rise. I thought that would be a little seed that I'd plant in his head for a few hours. But it was a few hours later, I did give him a call and I said, hello, Julian, have you had any interesting emails today? And he said, actually, yes, I have had one. Malcolm's been discussing a pay rise for you. And I said, oh, that's very kind, Julian. But I have to jump in here and say, I'm afraid that was me. That was not Malcolm that sent that email. He couldn't believe it. He said, oh, well, I really did think it was from Malcolm. There was nothing in his mind to think that it wasn't there. Now, I pushed the ICS calendar entry way down. So with him reading it on his iPhone, he would have just clearly thought that there's nothing to disprove that. So I didn't get my pay rise, but hey, it's worth giving it a try if you ever want to do this. Actually, no, please don't go do that. But let me finish on this. 88% of organizations around the world experienced targeted phishing attacks last year, and it is on the rise. I'm seeing some huge numbers in phishing emails, but more so in targeted phishing attempts because they work on such a better level. Why send out phishing emails to the masses? I think you could probably find 3 billion emails if you wanted on the dark web very easily. I usually go and download credentials off the dark web. You can go and get hold of them very, very cheaply or for free, and you can just send out mass emails to all of them and hope that someone sadly will go and click on that, and then maybe they'll go and give away some further credentials, or maybe even lucky to offer up just passwords or bank details or whatever. But when you target those people with information that they believe that it verifies who that person is, they're far, far more likely to go and act upon it. So what can we learn from this? Well, you just need to check everything. I mean, absolutely everything, not just the email address that it comes from, because that can be spoofed. A very simple way with the spoofing that I just showed you, but you can use some spoofing technology, which would be highly illegal. But if I were to spoof some technology with emails, I can then pretend to be other people. It is out there. It's actually, you can buy it on the dark web. And then you can actually have the communication backwards and forwards. And that is one thing that really does worry people. You may have seen this, people that can hijack emails that you've seen, and they'll have the rest of the thread of the email in your inbox. And when it's got financial information saying, look, we've just changed our financial data, please, can you send the latest amount of, or the invoice into this new account details, they're likely to go and click on it because they think they verified with the fact that they've got that email thread underneath it. With my little test, if anyone had ever replied to that message, it would have gone back to the other person and not me. So that's one thing I just have to mention there. It would have gone straight back to the original organizer, not me, funny enough. So although I was acting as a third party, this is not a man-in-the-middle attack, which is slightly different, where someone can just sit in between the emails bouncing backwards and forwards, and at the right time, they then can throw out an invoice and say, please pay us up now. I've seen that quite a lot. They might say, if you pay now, you'll get 10 or even 20% off, which is another hook into how someone might go and do it. So you have to check everything, not just check the email address, but check it with someone. If they're asking for email, for bank details, give them a ring. If it's going to annoy them, so what? You are going to give yourself that extra security from just checking with them. Now, we offer lots of different types of protection. You can chat to us about that later or another time. We've got Ben on the call. I think we've got Steve Connolly on the call. He's from ESET too. You can chat to us about our products, and of course, Chris as well. And so I just want to say a huge thank you. I've been Jake Moore, cybersecurity specialist at ESET. If you do have any questions, I haven't been monitoring if there have been any questions in the chat, but if you do, please fire them in there or turn on your mic. You can ask me any question about this or anything to do with cybersecurity. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jake. That's uber interesting for a company that specializes in sending out email on behalf of other businesses. I can completely relate to how email is open for fraud and attack. Just on that point, in a previous business that I worked for, we actually had an internal phishing team that would perform phishing against the employees on a regular basis, purposefully just to audit who was susceptible and then give these people internal training. So, you know, we had white hat hackers internally that would do all sorts of things to try and leverage your credentials. Just on that basis, if anybody hasn't seen this, but an awful lot of apps are starting to bring this on board. So on an iPhone now with iOS 13, it came in with, if you go into settings and then into passwords, it actually says at the top there, I've got 89 security recommendations, which is because that data is out on the dark web somewhere and somebody's now got my password. So I'm being prompted to go and change them. So this is where technology is getting a bit smarter. Can I just add two quick bits to this? One of the things that we started doing was not using email for overly sensitive information anymore, but actually to use secure messaging client, because all of a sudden it abstracts it away from, you know, open email, and it makes it harder to forward. There is also a lot of controls out there around DLP, data leakage prevention, and the ability to prevent employees leaking data outside of the organization. Is that typically something you guys get involved with?
Yeah, and it is a huge problem that we are seeing more so with home working. Now, before, if you've got lots of people in an office, you might have hundreds of people in the office, and you might have data loss protection where you can't go and physically get the data off the screen. And so to do so, you'd have to get your phone up and you'd have to start taking photos of it. That would be quite difficult in an office situation. But in the home, on your own, it is obviously a lot more easy to go and do that. And that's one of the biggest issues that companies are struggling with. Yeah, look, someone's doing it right now. Yeah. It is very, very difficult. But yes, we can discuss it, but it'll only ever take you up to a certain level. So after that, it's about changing the culture, getting the right people in place. We know that when people leave, that they take data away just before they are about to go. But if you change the culture in people, and that comes in the right awareness, the right training, of which you can then discuss a whole host of things to do with, from password management right the way through phishing and then DLP. It hopefully will discourage people to actually go and steal that data, as it were.
I think the most important piece here is the human is the weak link in the chain, and a lot of the attacks that happen. And ultimately, we've all got usernames and passwords that we can leak out all over the place, and that's really where the security paradigm falls over. 2FA and additional factors of authentication are great when they're not prohibitive, e.g. nobody likes to be balancing something over here and trying to get an RSA key unlocked and then over here typing something else in. What with regards to the home working side, what are you seeing as sort of standards? I know there are technologies out there like UEM, Unified Endpoint Management, and MDM, which has evolved from. But are you seeing sort of organizations adopt standards around security at the moment, or is it still way down on their list of priorities?
Yeah, so security tokens have definitely been more used over the last few months. I'm seeing when everyone went home, I think security went out the window. And do you know what? I was actually expecting there to be a huge cyber attack. Basically WannaCry 2.0 I was expecting, although I don't think that happened as such, because threat actors around the world realized that phishing emails were just still working, and it's the easiest form of doing it. Now, if you get a lot of information about someone, and then you can send them the right phishing email, like I was talking about, and then maybe a follow-up phone call. So you might have Microsoft 365. They ask you to they get you to click on the link, the username, the password. They might at one stage then ring you up and pretend to be whoever and get the code from you that you might have from your Authenticator app It might be SMS based, and they are being manipulated out via phishing, so voice call phishing. It's just taken such a hit over the last year. That seems to be the biggest problem. However, whenever two-factor authentication is offered, it's an absolute must. And I always like authenticator apps, but then you can go and use hard tokens such as like YubiKey, for example, so USB style authenticators. But I find the easiest way to get people to understand it is to at least get them to use two-factor authentication. SMS is the weakest of them all because it can be intercepted and it's not encrypted. But then to get them up to an authenticator app, which ESET offers, for example, it's far, far safer to get people to understand the security. But then if they're manipulated into giving it away, then we've got a whole host of problems there, because A, a malicious actor can go and get the data, but B, who's at fault? Because when they are manipulated, they don't know where to turn. But when they're tested, actually, as you said at the start there, some people feel picked on. They feel vindicated with those tests. So it's a real fine line into testing people and then giving them that education. So the awareness and education is so important. It can't be too much on them to feel picked on, especially if there's like, who's the dumb phishing email clicker of the week. We don't want that highlighted on the notice board. We want just to be subtly offering that information to them. We don't want anyone to lose their job just because they clicked on something. But it is important to have a security team to highlight who may be needing the extra help, because sometimes it might be the CEO, the next week it might be someone else. It doesn't always come down to who is the stupid one, as it were. It might just be someone who's very, very busy and getting all those emails through and just clicks on something they shouldn't have. And so it's an everyone situation.
I think it's just being aware to it, isn't it? I mean, just as a quick show of hands, how many people on the call have got a Nigerian cousin that's had a family member die that wants to give you 50 million? So, it really is out there. Purposefully as well, a lot of these emails have spelling mistakes in on purpose. I don't know if you've seen about that, just to filter out people that basically are susceptible versus non-susceptible. So the second phase is where the kind of fraud lies, but the first phase is all about let's filter people that are able to read the emails versus those that aren't, which again is quite interesting. It's a moving target. Does anybody have any experiences they want to share or any questions for?
Yeah, this is getting worse. We have an organisation in tow at the moment, and I've just joined CISP, and I'm linking up with the cybercrime people through another event that we attended through FSB, funnily enough. And I don't know how I can do this, but I wanted to share with you, and this is really scary. This will give you an insight into how serious this is getting, and it's getting worse. So I'm going to put in a click on the chat, if that's okay. And I don't know if somebody can show this on screen, but it's basically on digital attacks, where they're coming through from, the frequency, and so on. Now, these are state-sponsored as well as organised crime. So whoever's picking up the links on the chat, if you can put it on the screen and show it in real time, you can see this activity.
Now, can we trust you? Because at the moment,
no, I'm not Nicola Cofer. That's one of my colleagues.
Oh, there we go. We can't trust this guy.
But she uses. I tend to use Teams, funny enough. But John, I'm here. John, you recognise me, JB, in the corner there. It is me. But if anybody needs to be sort of, if you like, not scared, but sort of shaken up, as it were, into seeing what's incoming and what's being, and who's being attacked, when they're being attacked, and to what extent. This digital attack map is a real eye opener, honestly. I mean, honestly, if you haven't seen it, go and have a look, because it's quite a scary bit of something visually. But it gives you an insight into how serious it's becoming, and it's getting worse.
Yeah, it is.
Totally agree. NIST, so the National Institute of Security Technologies, do the same thing, and they've got like an RSS feed, and it will show you, your TV Anybody know about the whole TV thing in the US with Samsung TVs all had to be fitted with microphones? Anybody familiar with this? No? Okay, Google that. So
Well, it's the same. Sorry, Ollie. It's the same with the likes of Alexa. You know, these things are spying on you all the time. You may, you know, it might be a little bit, you know, conspiracy theory and all the rest of it, but these things are watching you and they know everything about you. And whatever you're doing, it owns. You know, it's a, you know, it's a spy in the camp, literally.
Well, so the problem with some of this stuff is when it's state sponsored. So the US, part of the US government basically made it mandatory for Samsung TVs to have microphones in it so they could switch them on remotely to listen into conversations.
That's ridiculous.
The challenge with that is that when the backdoor leaks out into society, this was all part of the Edward Snowden report, right? So some of the things that came through. And we saw recently, backdoors are basically put in by the vendor in order to be able to access systems and get around cryptography and various other pieces. The challenge is when that backdoor suddenly gets leaked out and everybody knows about it. And we've seen that time and time again from all the major tech vendors. One really quick thing I just want to cover off and Jake, ask, you know, yourself or Ben advice around this, which is app security. As an app developer or a developer for many, many years, it was pretty obvious that actually if I wanted to do a scam, all I needed to do was create a password vault, get you to put all your passwords in it, and then just harvest them all off. Really simple. Take me literally a day's worth of development. How do people in today's world overcome the amount of applications you can just install on your machines? What's malicious, what's not, and being able to make that judgment?
I think that comes down to a few factors. Sticking to the genuine app stores is an absolute must. There are people that still use third-party app stores, which are just full of Trojans and all sorts of horrible things. And then check out the reviews. The reviews for the robust, genuine password managers will be in the tens of thousands, maybe even more. And I know Which does every year a top 5 password manager. I certainly wouldn't use a password manager that has not got many ratings at all. I'd only go for the top few. And then check the reviews, check the developers. What other apps are they making? So yes, you still can get lots of dodgy apps, especially with Trojan apps, which is apps that are pretending to be something else, that can then do all sorts of things in the background. But if you stick to the good reviews, the good developers, and the genuine app stores, you should be pretty safe.
Excellent. I think it's just being mindful. I mean, and again, Rupert, you can keep me honest on this one. 15 years ago, you didn't have software access on your machine unless somebody turned up with a DVD or a USB stick. Over the last 10 years, as a result of these devices, primarily, people have become their own administrator.
Yeah, it's the proliferation of high bandwidth internet connections. Suddenly everyone can download everything, and social media has meant anyone can broadcast any old nonsense on the internet and everyone will believe it. So yeah, don't believe anything you read in email. I mean, it's not secure. You can change everything whimsically. If somebody wrote you a postcard and you were like, oh, the postman can read this, I'm not quite sure about someone telling me all this confidential stuff on a postcard. Same thing with email. At some point, you have to trust and empower the users to take responsibility for the primary tools of their trade, which is their computer, in my humble opinion. You use a computer to generate cash and peddle your trade and go to networking events and stuff. Just because it's a bit complicated and has a screen doesn't absolve you responsibility of knowing the basics. You can hire an IT practitioner like me or Chris or anyone else out there to advise you, but you have to take some responsibility for your actions. Sorry.
No, that's exactly right. So, but it is always a balance as well, because if you're going to give people more freedom, then education comes as part of that, and that's really, in my mind, it was always the largest part about security, was to be able to educate your employees and make sure that they have access to things that mean that they're not leaking out credentials. If there was one takeaway, Jake, one thing that everybody on the call can go away and think about, Would it be the 2FA story? Would it, what would be your kind of top tip to go away and do some research on?
Well, I love two-factor authentication, and I love authenticator apps. They just make my life so much easier. If you aren't using an authenticator app alongside a password manager, then that leaves you extremely vulnerable. If you're not using a password manager, it's likely that you're using the same 1, 2, or 3 passwords for everything. So that's an absolute must. Get your password manager to go and generate your passwords for you, and then it's so much easier. You don't have to think about it. You can just sit back, copy and paste, and know that you're absolutely safe.
And those password managers as well now. I mean, the one that I use, it notifies you if any of your credentials have been found on the dark web as well. So again, putting you on the front foot to be able to make those decisions, and absolutely use a completely different password for every single thing you do.
Yeah, because like you say, if they are then unique, then if one gets compromised, and they can still get compromised, it's not a huge problem. You can just go and change that password straight away, and it means you don't have to change all the others.
And then I guess finally, to add to that as well, single sign-on is becoming a really big, over the last 4 or 5 years, identity management applications for corporate use, where you do have one identity. However, that one identity is tightly controlled into every other solution. That's quite a big deal. In terms of, so Vic, you've asked a question about, password managers. Personally, there's LastPass, there's NPass. Has anybody else got any others that they want to add there?
I like Dashlane. That's another one that I would recommend. It's very good. Dashlane, yeah. Usually comes out number 1 or number 2. That one and LastPass, usually the top 2.
Yeah, and these will synchronize across devices as well, right? So what's nice about that is you're carrying one password.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's another one I've seen come up more and more. The other one is just never know your password and always go, forgot my password.
Yeah, as long as you've got multi-factor authentication set up.
Yeah.
Preferably not via SMS.
Yeah, and let's not even get into the S-MIME conversation, because it just falls over before it starts. Encrypted email just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah.
Interestingly, on the Apple side, I worked on a project about 6 or 7 years ago where you go into a store and an iPad is locked into basically single app mode, so you could browse their catalog. And we discovered that actually as the thing boots up, if you tap the springboard button really quickly, you would actually break single app mode and it would drop to the springboard when you had complete control over the device. I reported that to Apple, and the response was Apple doesn't recognize security vulnerabilities with its devices or operating system. Wow. Anyway, the end result for that particular device was actually quite funny, because it was in a McDonald's in London, and during the day somebody went in with a chainsaw in the middle of the day, chainsawed the end off the shield that was holding it in place, slid it out and walked off. 2 things that spring to mind: no one's going to challenge somebody with a chainsaw running, and secondly, nobody's going to challenge somebody with a chainsaw running, shearing through a metal stand inside a McDonald's to walk off with an iPad. So there we go.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming. Any other questions for Jake or Ben?
Well, do you see an increase of cyber attacks when cryptocurrency price starts to rise? Not necessarily. However, yeah, we do see Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies used in phishing a lot, because there are people that still have no idea what it's about, and people want to know more about it. And so their intrigue takes them into a realm of possible phishing. And like we're talking about Elon Musk, a fake Twitter account jumps on Twitter and says, I'm doubling Bitcoin, just give me yours, that kind of thing. Yes, it can affect the Bitcoin price, but it can also increase the amount of people that are going to click on those links and believe what they're doing. So it's not necessarily connected, but it can offer that intrigue, which has a result in possibly people losing some money.
You seen any connection? Sorry, Jake, it's Rupert. Have you seen any connection in someone So just before, for example, Elon Musk's account gets hacked, or some high profile person gets their account hacked, a lot of Bitcoin's getting purchased. And you say hack Elon's account, and he says Bitcoins are amazing, go and purchase them. The price rockets up. The bad guy then sells their Bitcoins for an elevated price, and they keep the gap. So effectively, the bad guys short the market by, and you get that with DOGE, that cryptocurrency, which is the joke one. So you get people buy that specifically, and then pump the market and then flog it. That's the current. It's easier to get money like that than it is to hack people and get their bank details, because we're educating you people.
Yes, good point. I think Elon Musk did get fined for doing that. He explicitly said he definitely wasn't, but then it was found that, of course, he
definitely.
I think the cryptocurrency debate's an interesting one. The whole idea of having a transactional ledger that nobody owns is a great, blockchain itself is fantastic. Cryptocurrency, not so much. Personally, never got involved with it. Knew about it for many years, but also actually the damage that it's done to the environment. Right, you've got these machines that are just wearing away all day, every day, chewing up, massive amounts of electricity to pump out one Bitcoin with nothing other than a crypto hash coming out the other side. It's it's kind of mind blowing. Who knows though? As soon as it's recognised as a legitimate currency, then all of a sudden, I think, and when I say that by the markets, then all of a sudden the cat's out of the bag. They've been very reluctant to do that so far, though, right?
It's coming though. I think definitely in my lifetime, I'm going to see cryptocurrencies start to overtake the more traditional currencies.
Well, look at what's happened with cash.
Yeah.
Did anybody use cash in 2020?
I don't think my kids have ever seen it.
So there we go. But also, I think it's when cryptocurrency has standardized exchange with proper regulated banks and people like that behind it as backers, that's when people like myself would be more interested in it, rather than watching, the current exchanges chew everybody's money up and disappear. So what about VPNs? Alistair's, when we look at VPNs, they were touted as the solution. I know that, Heartbleed and various other solutions like that meant that they were a little bit less secure, but in a remote workforce, what's your thought about VPNs?
Absolutely necessity. However, like you mentioned, there are going to be vulnerabilities in some VPN software. I know there was an issue with Nord, unfortunately, which is a huge hit on these companies that are there to protect, but they can have vulnerabilities in them. These 0 days will come out, and it takes a long time, unfortunately, until they are patched or at least located. And so I think people just need to be aware. I mean, I hate it if anyone in the press says, well, that's it, VPNs aren't safe, we shouldn't use them. Of course we should. It's like going back to the multi-factor authentication debate. SMS isn't secure, so we shouldn't use it for authenticating our accounts. Well, it's better than just a password alone. So of course we should, but we should understand where those vulnerabilities are. And as soon as anything is updated, we need to patch. And that goes across the board. So it's not just VPNs, that goes for operating systems, apps, the lot, our phones. We need to make sure people are updating the moment they are offered that opportunity to go and patch.
Yeah, and I think there's other technologies as well, like micro-segmentation, device health posturing, and software-defined networking that basically also adds value to that, because you're checking whether the device is healthy before you let it anywhere near the network. So there's a next layer down to VPNs out there as well. There's a great question in the chat as well, which is a beautiful segue to say, okay, you've got me interested. How do we get our organization health checked? What's the next steps? What do you typically do from an engagement perspective, Jake?
Well, I absolutely love Cyber Essentials, if I'm honest. I think Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus is a fantastic way of getting you up to speed with what is going on. They'll look at all the aspects with a GDPR idea as well that overflows it all. And it's a very good way of making sure that you are up to date with all your network, each endpoint, antivirus, etc., etc. And once you've completed Cyber Essentials, you can then go for the Plus, which gives you a stamp of approval, really. I think it's soon going to be, over the next decade, I can see this happening, it's going to be another GDPR situation where you have to comply with this set of rules. And that is a very good way of just making sure you're up to date, up to speed, and likely to reduce the amount of attacks. Now that's what we're doing. We're just pushing it away from our own business and pushing it onto someone else. If I can refer it to how a burglar thinks, a burglar walks down a road. If he sees a burglar alarm and some high fences and some security cameras over one house, he's going to think, well, what's the point of going for that one? Because next door, they have no door. If anything, they've left the back door open. I can just go in there and steal the TV. Now, this is the same thing for our companies. We are putting on all the extra layers of security, which will protect us. Yes, of course, you could still get in if you put enough effort into it, but it pushes them on to the next person and next business for them to attack.
Yeah, it's especially worth a look if they've got, you know, a doorbell that's connected to the internet as well, because we've seen those getting hacked time and time again. Rick, there's just a comment in the chat that you've just put in there. Is it worth just talking about that for a few seconds? Sorry, Rick.
Okay, so the cyber alarm and action fraud team. Okay, yes. So I used to work with the cybercrime teams around the Southwest, and I know a few in the Met as well. They are very good at protecting local businesses. They do work alongside action fraud. I think just have to mention about action fraud is, although when you go and report a fraud or a cyber crime, it's not always going to be followed up. Going back to burglaries, if you are burgled, you ring 999 if it's happening, or whatever it is, 112 if it's already happened. And you ring them up and you will expect to have someone come around and speak to you. It's not the same for cybercrime, and it ends up being reported. So it's like a reporting function. So, and I used to cherry pick the best ones that may have evidence left behind in those offences. For us, it was about 300 offences a month. I'd go and pick out the ones that we might be able to go and investigate. But it is a problem. So rather than getting to action fraud, if we can mitigate it from even happening, reducing those numbers, then we're going to proactively protect us in the future.
Fantastic. And again, I mean, it's so common and there's so much happening at the moment. Obviously, the police can't respond to every single.
That's it. I think half the crimes these days are fraud or cybercrime, which is a huge amount of work for the police. It certainly was when I was there, and I keep hearing how much more difficult it's getting for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're just coming up to the top of the hour. So I want to thank Chris hugely for arranging this. I think it's been an invaluable session.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
We'll make sure that your contact details are shared, Jake, so that anybody can reach out.
Sure, yeah.
Is it best for yourself or Ben or what?
Either or. I mean, I'm usually on Twitter and LinkedIn if you want to find me there. Yeah. But their email, yeah, share Ben's email address. He can help you out with all our latest products that will keep you nice and safe.
No probs. And then I'm just going to shamelessly plug that the sort of marketing research report that we're doing again. So if anybody's interested in the outcome of that, please complete the survey and you will be sent that at the end of the completion. We've got the marketing session next Tuesday as well. So looking forward to that. And I'm just going to hand over to John, if that's okay.
Oh, actually, did we miss a question in the chat? Sorry, I just looked at the chat from Madavi about SMEs being checked for robustness and Max.
I think
that's
about the Cyber Essentials. Oh, that is the way of checking.
I was trying to discreetly feel somebody was trying to get hold of me whilst I was on mute, so I must have missed that bit. I just wanted to check. Yeah, the
Cyber Essentials is number one way of
perfect.
Making sure you're nice and protected.
Absolutely.
Over to you, John.
Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you all very much. And just to say to everybody that the team at the office and Sadie Parr is on the call now. If anybody wants any additional information or wants pointing in the right direction, yes, the chamber team will be able to help and give you the practical help and advice, and the people that will support you and help you through that. So please contact us if you want any additional information. And obviously we're directly in contact with Chris Ward-Jones and Jake, and obviously can link you up with them as well, who can provide the expert advice. So please, if you not quite sure what to do, just contact the chamber team on the appropriate contact details that you've got, phone or email, and we'll deal with that for you. No problems at all. So it's thanks very much, Jake. And I'm just trying to work out how whose email I can send to get a pay increase now to try and see how that all works effectively. Thank you for the tips. I wasn't quite sure it was tips or warning actually, but thanks very much. It's really good to actually see the challenges that we face every day, and we all know and understand the kind of scam emails that you know, the members of our team get, which do look very realistic and come from other members of the team. And it's I think it was Rupert that said, you know, the problem starts with each of us if we not alert and understanding what we need to do and avoid these things, because it's always someone who actually goes onto the link that creates the problem. So it's really important that everybody is kind of aware and knows their own personal responsibility. But nevertheless, thanks a lot. That's been really helpful, and it does, particularly with the home working and all those aspects, make it even more really demanding to actually get these things in place. So thank you very much for being with us, and Ben as well. We do appreciate it. Ollie, of course, for chairing once again, and we obviously make sure that all of us heed the advice that we've been given today to protect ourselves and make sure that we can avoid these things, which can become very costly, not only in terms of real cost, but actually psychological cost to people that get caught up in these things. So thanks a lot, really appreciated. Back to you, Ollie.
No, thanks very much. And finally, we'll make sure we share the contact details around in the email that follows up along with the video. If anyone's got any further questions, they can reach out. But yeah, ultimately, stay safe, question everything, accept nothing that's free, because there's typically going to be a price to everything that lands in your inbox. But yeah, thank you very much. Take care and have a good rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.